Hi, today I will be going through a little bit of what has happened since Trump took office. It's February 8th today, and the first thing I want to do is to have a look at the executive actions that Trump has taken. CNN has done a compilation here. He has issued 84 executive actions so far. Federal government 24, economy 13, immigration 9, national security 8, climate and energy 6, foreign policy 5, education 4, health 2, and 13 others. And down here they are in chronological order. The first one was with immigration. And then he ordered the flag to be hoisted to the top. As you know, it was on half pole because President Jimmy Carter had died, and then it has to be on half pole for 30 days. So he ordered it up in the top because he was inaugurated as president, and it should remain there until the end of the day and then continue on half pole. And then he signed initial rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions. That is, he undid things that Biden had done, which Biden obviously had undone what he had done. And then it's something about restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship. I haven't read that. Ending the weaponization of the federal government. This is just crazy stuff. Because the one who is weaponizing the federal government is him. Return to work. Okay, let's go up a little bit. He signed a slurry of things here on January 20th. Most of it. So let me take a few that I have opened and we can see. Here, this one caught my eye. Designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. And I read this in detail. What it says is the purpose is to create a process by which certain international cartels and other organizations will be designated as foreign terrorist organizations. The order just creates the process, nothing else. It doesn't designate anyone. And down here, policy, it's the policy of the United States to ensure blah, 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 elimination. Section 3, implementation. Here we get into the stuff. Within 14 days of the date of this order, this was signed on the 20th, I think, so it would be like, it should already have passed these 14 days. The Secretary of State, that is Marco Rubio, shall take all appropriate action in consultation, blah, blah, to make a recommendation regarding the designation of any cartel or other organization as a foreign terrorist organization or as a specially designated global terrorist. So this should have passed these 14 days. And when I went here to look at the newer ones, they have only designated the Houthis. I didn't see anything about any Mexican cartels. And obviously, Cartel de los Soles in Venezuela is already designated. And FARC and ELN, they are, I think Cartel de los Soles is, maybe I'm wrong on that, but FARC and ELN are designated as terrorist groups. The Colombo-Venezuelan narco-terrorists. Let's see what else we have. Establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. All right, this is the douche agenda. Here it says, definitions, douche structure. The United States Digital Service is hereby publicly renamed as the United States Douche Service. And that reminds me of this guy. Maybe you've seen him. President.
There he is. Oh, this is fantastic.
You like Family Guy?
But that's not really appropriate, Stewie. Oh, of course it is. I loathe that know-it-all flea-bitten mutt. No, it's just that the meaning of that word has changed ever since President Douchebag.
Thank you. I just received a call from my worthy opponent, Senator Date Rape.
So, there you have it. President Douche. All right, what else do we have? withdrawing the United States from and ending funding to certain United Nations organizations. So this is about withdrawing from the Human Rights Council and UNESCO and the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Employees of them were involved in the October 7th attacks. But the Human Rights Council, by withdrawing from that, as my perspective is that they will lose all influence. The Soviet Union were boycotting the UN in the beginning. That's why they could take the decision to defend South Korea and the Korean War. Withdrawing and boycotting is not a good idea, generally. And the bad actors of the world, which there are many of, those in red basically, they have a policy of coordinating and cooperating in order to get on the Human Rights Council, including Venezuela, which has committed crimes against humanity. And I accuse them of genocide. But they got on the Human Rights Council in spite of this. So to ceding that space to global terrorists, I think is a bad idea. It will be the end of the United Nations. And you remember what happened when the precursor of the United Nations, the organization before, when that was abandoned by the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, we had World War II. I have to remember the number of the world wars now. I think Trump forgot it the other day. What else do we have? Imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court. Well, they are investigating Israel and they could investigate the United States. And here he's saying that the US and Israel have never signed a convention establishing the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, which is true. And therefore he says they are not allowed to investigate American citizens. But here's the deal. The US has jurisdiction in the United States, does not have extraterritorial jurisdiction. So a crime committed in Venezuela, for instance, is not something the US authorities can legally, they can investigate it, see if it relates to the US, but they can't prosecute it. So when they are prosecuting criminals from the Cartel de los Soles from Venezuela, it's because they're smuggling cocaine or doing arms trafficking or something like that in the US or against US citizens. Something that violates the law in the US. And the thing is that the International Criminal Court has been signed on to, or has been adopted in the majority, I think the majority of the countries of the world. So if an Israeli or an American commits a crime in a country where the ICC has jurisdiction, then obviously the ICC can investigate and prosecute it. Anything else would be ridiculous. So what Trump is doing here is trying to impose US legislation extraterritorial over the rest of the world. And that is a bad idea. That's going to lead to international conflict and possibly war. Let me change topic. Now I went through those I thought were worth mentioning here. And, well, there are some more crazy things that the US, Trump has done. I mean, Trump, he fired the head of the Navy and apparently just for being a woman and ordered her out of her house within 3 hours. That's absolutely insane. It's mind-blowingly stupid on top of that. And the only reason he did it is surely to terrorize. So what makes Trump different from the other terrorists if his method of working is to terrorize people, just to make people see that he can do it and he can get away with it, so that they will be so afraid to stand up for the law and for what is right. There's another thing I want to mention. I was doing a lot of investigations since last video, and there is a problem here on YouTube that certain words will get the video demonetized, and for people who are making these videos for a living, that's deadly. Even if you appeal and get it reverted in a few days, you will have lost income, because most of the income is in the first 1, 2, 3 days. So there are things you can't mention here, like the artist from Austria with a mustache. If you mention his name or the name of his movement, you're likely to get the video demonetized. And that is not good. And it seems to me, when I was making videos in Swedish, that just the mention of Trump was detrimental. And it's not because people are opposed to Trump in Sweden, it's because they are for Trump. And when I talk about him in a critical way, they will give a thumbs down and they will report the video. So we are seeing a concerted effort to silence any criticism against Trump. And since we know who is behind him, and if you don't know, I'll show you on the map. That guy. And he has control and an influence over a large part of the world, including in Sweden, where they for decades have had spies in the Social Democratic Party. So they've been on the left, and now they're also on the right, on both sides. And there is no middle left. If you're in the middle, like me, who are against both the Georgian with the mustache and the Austrian with the mustache, you're out of luck. So, what constraints exist? Well, as they said here on CNN, why the courts may be the last constraint on Trump, but may not contain his power grab. Well, the politicians, obviously the Republicans control all branches of government and both houses in Congress. And they do that not because the Republicans think that this guy is right. They don't. Most of them don't. But I've heard from following the news that they are afraid. And I mean literally afraid. Not maybe for themselves, but for their spouse or for their children. And then we get back to this thing with terror. And since we've seen now in the Supreme Court that he can get the Supreme Court to declare him above the law, then what recourse is there? And the other side of the coin is that suppose that you do get a court order against him, then who's going to implement it? The Department of Justice. And who's the head of the Department of Justice? Is she going to do it? Not likely. Oh, by the way, Pam Bondi ends FBI effort to combat foreign influence in US politics. What foreign interest are we talking about? Could it be that guy? Obviously it's that guy. She's from Florida, my state. And in Florida, we have the Russian mafia. They live on Fisher Island in Miami, and also a little bit up north along Aventura. They are not at all far from Mar-a-Lago. I'm sure Mar-a-Lago is a good meeting point for them. Oh, one more thing I would like to mention, speaking of Florida. Here it says in Miami Herald, Florida tycoon is behind oil for migrants deal US reached with Venezuelan strongman. You know that a lot of Venezuelans supported Trump. Before Trump came along in 2015, we were all opposed to Maduro. united. But when Trump came along, the majority in Miami thought that Trump would be their guy to get Maduro out. And I warned them, I said, no, Trump is on the take of that guy in Russia, Putin. And so we parted ways in 2016. And I hate to say it, but I told you so. It's sad to see that they were so royally screwed over. So here it says, a Florida magnate with close ties to the Republican Party helped set up the recent meeting between Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro and President Donald Trump's special envoy, laying the groundwork for a major deal that would allow the Caracas regime to boost its, it's a tyranny, to boost its oil sales to the United States in exchange for accepting hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan deportees. I mean, this is crazy. They criticized Biden for making a deal with Maduro in which the Maduro regime were allowed to export certain amount of oil, which the world needed in order to defeat Russia in the Ukraine, in exchange for Venezuela releasing some US hostages. And by the way, I'm a US citizen and I was also a hostage in Venezuela. I don't know what they negotiated. But the exchange, the deal was hostages for the right to sell oil. Now, the Venezuelans were saying, that was bad. They shouldn't have allowed him to sell the oil. Never mind the hostages. Let them rot in a Venezuelan jail. And now, what's this deal? The deal is that Maduro can continue selling the oil in return for what? In return for what? He gets to sell the oil and he gets his refugees back. I mean, it's a win-win for him. He wins on both points. Because these people fled Venezuela when he was doing a genocide. He was doing crimes against humanity, killed several 100,000 in a genocide, and they fled to the US. And he wants them back, and he's been trying to get them back, and they refuse. They say, we are not going back to your genocide. And now Trump gives him 2 wins. He gives in that hand, he gives in that hand. How can I explain this? Maybe imagine a little village in the West where there is 1 gas station and 1 sheriff. And the wife of the gas station owner is being abused. So she runs away and she hides in the sheriff's home. And the gas station owner says to the sheriff, I won't, the sheriff says, I won't buy gas from you. But you're the only one selling gas. I need you to buy your gas. And how can we make a deal? And the gas station owner says, well, give me my wife back. I'll sell your gas. Okay, I'll give you your abused wife back so you can continue abusing her and I can buy your oil and we'll make a good deal. That's the kind of deal Trump made. That's the kind of deal. Well, I think I'll stop here because I've already talked too much. But this is going down the drain quickly. Luckily, the FBI is putting up a resistance. And as I said, the thing is that you can win in court how much you want. It does not matter if you cannot implement it in the executive branch. In Spanish, there is a word, expression, who's gonna put the bell on the cat? And that's the question. Who's gonna put the bell on the cat? Oh, because the thing is the mice were having a meeting. The cat were eating the mice. And somebody says, but if we put the bell on the cat, then we will hear him coming and he won't be able to catch us. Oh, that's a good idea, they said. And then the boss said, but who's gonna put the bell on the cat? That's the question in the US. Who's gonna put the bell on the cat?